guys. I hope everybody's having a great Thursday. Okay, so on Tuesday, we talked about, where did I leave that? I covered it. We talked about Shelly Smola's embroidered designs. Started walking you guys through making the Cars on the Go car carrier, and used all the brand name toy cars that you could possibly use on this fun little mat. So we embroidered one block, not this size. We embroidered one of those ones over there. And then I showed you guys how to attach the sashing. And then I went home and did my homework and put the rest of my little road piece together. So this is the outside of the car carrier. It's also going to have a zippered closure. And when this folds up, the outside will look like this. And there's a handle that goes up here. The instructions are pretty good for that. I don't think we're going to do that on video, but that's okay. The embroidery is usually the part that stumps people who are new to this sort of project anyway. So outside of the carrier, but you're wondering, how do my cars travel inside my carrier? Are they protected? Are their paint jobs protected? I care about my little sports cars. So for the car carrier, Shelly Smola has done a really, really cool interior, and she's made pockets. So there's background embroidered pieces, and then freestanding applique pockets with clear vinyl. So that you, where did my car go? So that your car can drive right in and be secure. So I'm going to walk you through making a pocket today, because they're a little bit weird if you haven't done any embroidery where you've cut a giant hole in the middle of it partway through. It's a little nerve-wracking. And I ended up doing this a little bit differently than what the pattern called for. I found it worked better for me. And the main reason for that is my very first piece of vinyl that I stitched down, the order in which I stitched it, I ended up perforating all the way around and had no window in that piece of vinyl, which was incredibly disappointing. So this is my test piece where I tried something new afterwards, and I ended up putting the vinyl on the back one step later in the embroidery. This is also the piece where I forgot to add the backing fabric. Testing is your best friend when you're doing something really new. But I tested this for you, and we're going to walk through one of these today. I'm not going to do it blue. I'm going to do it other colors, so it's easier to see the difference between the front and the back. And then these get sewn on with organza ribbon. So we'll get started making a pocket. So I've got some sewing vinyl. I don't remember which one this is from up front. It's clear. It's mostly see-through. It's pretty soft. We have Kimberbell vinyl. We have two different vinyls on the bolt, usually one from Heat & Bond, one from Riley Blake. So there's options for you. And we're going to have a really sweet car carrier. And then maybe we'll make a quilt to match, because who doesn't want a quilt to match their little car carrier? Be a great take along to grandma's house on holidays or any of those things. So without further ado, let's make magic happen. As you can see, my pockets are pretty firm. That's partly the wash away stabilizer that was not washed out all the way, and it's partly that they're interfaced with Fuse and Fleece from OSD. So it's almost like a really, really thin fusible batting. So we'll add that to our top piece first, and then we'll set up and do some embroidery. So I'm going to make a gray and red pocket so you guys can see the difference between front and back. I'm just going to do the gray on the front because I like it better. So my Fuse and Fleece is cut the same size as my fabric, 6 by 6-ish, I think. Read the pattern, follow the pattern, and we're just going to fuse that in place. And this is going to give this fabric some body and structure as you embroider it. Help it keep its shape once you start cutting weird shapes and holes into it. So our front piece is ready. Our back piece is ready. I probably set our vinyl down somewhere silly, and I will probably lose it by the time I need it. So that's usually how it goes when I'm working with clear vinyl at home. And then we'll get our hoop ready to go. So today I'm using Aqua Mesh stabilizer. This is a wash away stabilizer. It will come out with a quick rinse in the sink for as much as I need it to come out. We're going to lay the inner hoop on top of the stabilizer. And we're going to lift the pair and put them in our little hoop. And this great little Bernina hoop, or Bernette hoop, using the Bernette 79 again today, has the latch to close it, which is awesome. And then we're going to embroider. So loading your designs on your Bernette, you're going to go to the open folder. It usually starts in the machine. We're going to go, my design is on my USB stick. And it's under Cars on the Go. And this is my main pocket. The other thing we're going to want is some wash away tape, because no fingers in the hoop. So our design, I'm actually going to stitch this entire block in just white thread so you guys can see what's happening with it. You can do it multiple colors. There's lots of places to change color here and make it personalized for yourself. So we're going to let our hoop do its little calibration movement, our arm, and it knows where it is now and it's ready to go. This needs a bigger than this hoop. There's a bigger hoop with this machine. I didn't grab that one. That's what happens when you don't check things ahead of time. Get all excited. And I did all of these on my bigger machine at home. So the limit on your machine, you don't want to size your designs more than 20% up or down. You will lose resolution. And either your stitches will get too dense or they won't be dense enough. And on something like this that's freestanding, you could run into some really big problems. For demo purposes, this will be okay. I'm not actually going to use this pocket. So our very first line is a placement line. Our very first stitching line is a placement line, so we know where to put our fabric. So our placement line is here. Our fabric needs to be covering that entirely. And then this is where, if you are organized and you have your tape with you, you won't stick your fingers in the hoop trying to keep things from shifting, which is much safer. So personally, I'm going to tape corners on this one because I know I have to trim this out in a second. Front outside fabric on the top. We're also going to add the backing piece in right away, because then we're going to make like a little tiny quilted pocket. That's on the front of the hoop, and then we're going to flip the hoop over and tape our backing piece on the back. And this is the one where you have to be extra careful that you get this exactly where you need it. But as you're taping on the back of your hoops, when they're up in the air like this, you don't want to press down on your stabilizer and distort anything. So you're just going to put the tape on gently, and depending where your design is placed in your hoop, if you can get it taped kind of right to the edge of the inner hoop, the stabilizer's firmer there than in the middle. The trampoline effect isn't good. Tape front and back. This is one of the more time-consuming steps, but it's worth doing properly. And at this point, you can press firm on your tape to make sure front and back are adhered to your stabilizer. And our next step is going to be our tack down line. And then we are going to pull this back off the machine and do some trimming, because most of the rest of the stitching is happening inside our little quilted thing. There's some edge finishing along the way, and you don't want that to, you don't want to like get to the point where you can't trim this out. So again, the double curved scissors make this super easy. On here, you probably have a 1/16 or an 1/8 of an inch. Our satin stitch finish around the edge is quite wide. Okay, we'll go back to the embroidery machine and continue onward. So the next stitch on here does the decorative detailing, and it's still gonna stop and let me trim those threads if I need to. This is a setting you can turn off on your machine. Okay, next option is, oh, we're actually going to skip through. The next item in the stitch out is all the background stitching. This is a whole lot of satin stitching. I'm actually going to save this and do this at the end. So on here you can skip through parts of the design. I'm going to skip to the next part, which is my placement for my window. So that outline is the box where we are going to trim out our window. So, ever so carefully. The instructions actually have you cut a hole in this before you put it in the loop, but I forgot to do that part. So we don't want to cut through the stabilizer at this point. We want to cut through the top fabric, the backing fabric, and that fusing fleece. From experience, it's pretty generous satin stitching, so we'll be okay for covering that up. The instructions have you do the satin stitch with the vinyl behind it already. My first one, like I said, perforated the vinyl and my window fell right out. So I actually opted to do the satin stitch first, and then before the next step I added in the vinyl on the back. So we're going to do it in that order. we're gonna add the vinyl. The next stitch is just a little decorative running stitch, and it will be much gentler on our vinyl. So I didn't lose the vinyl. Success. So ideally your vinyl is going to line up inside the straight lines around your window. Just because of how I was doing this, I left my vinyl a little bigger so I didn't sew through my tape. And then I trimmed my vinyl down later. Both ways will work, but you do need to be mindful that you're going to be sewing through your tape. So that's where wash away tape will be more of your friend than tear away tape, because you don't have to worry about tearing it out afterwards if it's in there. And you want to tape these really carefully. You don't want this vinyl shifting once you flip this hoop back over, because it's nearly impossible to see where it's gone. I'm going to very, very carefully flip this over and then press from the good side when our hoop is flat on the table, not up in the air, to make sure that's all secured. And this is a good time to check that it hasn't moved. My vinyl is where I want it. I don't know if you can see that on camera. And then there's a little Velcro closure on this. So our next stitching line is the placement for our Velcro. Embroidering over Velcro is really weird. It's really got a mind of its own. So, Velcro, like I said, super weird to embroider over, but very doable. I found that a little bit of 505 on the back of the end of my Velcro. Normally I do this over a garbage can, but helped hold it where I needed it, because this is far too small a piece to try and maneuver. And you don't want to cut the Velcro down before you get started, because it's much easier to keep it in the right place if you have a long piece. So that little bit of 505 is going to hold the end over your placement line. Your tape is going to hold the rest of your piece of Velcro and keep your hands out of there. Velcro's so weird. Okay. At this point, we can trim and make our Velcro the right size for the piece. Again, you want to do that on the flat table, not up in the air. And I would switch to black thread for this if it wasn't for demo purposes. And then, if things are not going well, you're going to stop it before you have a giant tangle. Looks like I shredded thread. Shredded thread, always scary when it happens. Usually you just need a new needle and that problem will go away. This is probably directly related to the Velcro catching the thread. And then it thinks it's all done, but I missed a stitch section. So I think we'll turn that on and then we can show how to, we can let it run while we do other things. I'm just gonna hit the check mark. And then I skipped past our outline stitching so we can show you guys the vinyl, and maybe I'll show you the vinyl on the back of the Velcro, and then we'll continue on with that. So vinyl's sewn in, Velcro's sewn on, and I'm just going to do the outline stitch around the whole thing. And I'm not even going to worry about taking the wash away tape off because it's going to wash away when I take this out of the machine and wash it out. So we're going to let that run for 11 minutes. But there's what a finished pocket will look like once it's embroidered and washed out. And I found that they were stiff enough, the way I made them, that they just kind of fold and do what I want them to do. And same thing with the pockets. Personal preference, I put the loop tape on the big pocket with the clear vinyl, and no, the hook tape, the scratchy bit, up rather than down. The softer loop tape was easier to do upside down. And on that one, you're taping the Velcro to the back of the piece. Those are going to go in there like that. And sewing these on, Shelly's directions have you sew these on with long strips of organza ribbon. A tapestry needle is not your first choice because they're blunt on the end. It is what's recommended, but it's taken me way longer than I thought it would have to sew as much as I've sewn on already. So I'm actually going to switch to a chenille needle because it still has an eye big enough to fit the ribbon, but it's not, it's much pokier, which will go through all this thickness much easier. And in the instructions, it has the order in which to sew these on to be the most efficient with your ribbon. And you'll want to have your pocket panels embroidered and sewn together before you start sewing your pockets on. Really, really challenging to add this piece when you already have pockets sewn on here, because it's just too bulky and stiff. I did it in the wrong order. I already had this pocket sewn in place. So there's a tail left to finish and tie off on the back. All this ribbon is going to be secured in behind your road, so it magically disappears when you're all done. And now, one little pocket for one little car. But knowing how many cars my kid has, I'm guessing we could fit a whole bunch of cars in there, or some little trucks. So as many cars as you want. But then your little guy or girl knows which car is in which pocket. You can count them all to make sure you have them all before you leave home. It's all done. No happy music because I stitched it in a weird order. But we have a pocket. And it would be ready to wash out and let dry. Clear vinyl in the back that you probably can't see. I might be able to cut the stapler here. And at no point in this embroidery did we cut a giant hole in the stabilizer, which helped keep it stable and lined up. Yeah, we have a window. Bye, guys. I'm gonna go hide in my car carrier now. Thanks for joining me today. Be safe, be kind, be calm, and have a great Thursday evening.